Brought to you by the Every Dollar app. Start budgeting for free today.
I appreciate you taking your time. I know you and your team talk a lot about the trends in the real estate market, and my question is, when do you think the obnoxious overbidding on houses will stop?
Wow. Is that happening in your area in Philly right now?
I believe so. But yeah, I could tell you personal experiences, but I just feel that I personally put in offers, and I'm just getting beat $50,000 more than asking price.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, the simplified answer is that is caused by more buyers than there is inventory. Anytime basic economics supply-demand curve says that anytime there are a large number of people chasing a few goods, it drives the price up. Scarcity drives the price up. Opposite of that would be if there was more houses on the market than there were buyers, then that would be called a buyer's market. This is a seller's market. A buyer's market means that the sellers feel just blessed to have anyone look at their poor little house, because nobody's out looking at houses, and because there's hardly any buyers. In other words, there's 10 buyers for 100 houses. Right now, there's 100 buyers for 10 houses. You see the difference? And that's the simplified answer, and that's being caused by several things. But one of the things that's driven it of late in the last 5 years, as much as anything, is all of the migration that has happened of people changing states because of taxation and archaic, crazy laws having to do with the Fauci pandemic and all kinds of stuff. People just left California. They left New York, and they're in Tennessee, they're in Georgia, they're in Florida, and they're in Texas. And the numbers are there to support that. That's not a political statement. It's just a huge change in population shift. And so that's created in those states in particular a shortage. Now, you're not in one of those states, but just to say that's exasperated it in those states. Then the other thing that's exasperated it is if the economy, if builders of single-family homes do not believe in the economy, then they don't build houses because they're afraid they can't sell them. And that's happened hardcore in the last 18 to 24 months because the real estate market slowed down. And so builders, the number of new housing starts is way off, and we were already had an inventory shortage. And so now with not as much new housing coming online as it needs to, now we've got even more of an inventory shortage. And that's what's driving this, is you've got 100 buyers or whatever the number is on 10 houses. Now, that's not an exact number, but there's this tremendous oversupply of buyers, and so they're doing stupid stuff like bidding $50,000 over what the appraisal is, which then ends up ultimately changing the appraisal because people do it enough, it becomes a new market value.
Yeah, and that was a follow-up question, too. Exactly. I mean, how are these houses, townhomes, getting appraised to this value that, or just, it's kind of, I don't want to say made up, but how is it equaling the overbidding? How are these appraisers saying you're right? It is over 50,000.
Well, if you have 10 houses in a row on the market and 6 of them sell with overbids, you now have a new market value. It's the overbid value. Because market value, the definition of it in appraisal class is what a willing buyer gives a willing seller where no duress is involved. Now, we could argue that this is a duress market, but in other words, neither one of them are being cheated and neither one of them have a gun to their head. And so that buyer's willing to pay that seller that, knowing it. And if they do that enough times on that block, voila, you have a new market value. And it's the overbid price. It's not the original value. And so, again, the shortage of housing versus the number of buyers is driving it up. And so we've got some markets like yours. I was not aware Philadelphia was that hot, but we've got some markets like yours where you put a house on the market and you're getting multiple bids over the weekend, even with interest rates almost double what they were 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's another piece of this, Grace, is that there's some golden handcuffs out there because people either refinance or bought at crazy low rates, and now they're unwilling to sell that home because they don't want to take on a new mortgage that has double the interest rate, which means there's lower inventory. So I don't see this thing shifting drastically in the next year. I think when you're ready to buy, you got to buy, and if it means you had to get a competitive bid in with a good real estate pro, then that's what you had to do to get that home. There's not going to be deals out there where you're, doing 20,000 under asking price right now.
It's not the time to look for a bargain in real estate business. That's for sure.
No, not at all.
I'm a bargain buyer. I don't buy except in bargains. And
Dave hasn't bought a lot lately.
And I haven't bought anything in a while. I mean, it's and I'd kind of like to. I got some cash I'm sitting on, but I'm not going to pay. I don't pay retail, so it's just like a Ramsey rule. So,
what's your price point, Grace?
Well, I mean, and I've been guilty where to kind of get to be competitive, I've gotten 20,000 over, but I mean, I'm looking around the 300 to 320.
That range goes real fast,
yeah,
especially
that's the
market.
biggest shortage.
Oh yeah.
I was talking to my real estate buddy yesterday, and he said homes under 500,000 in Nashville are going like that.
If I was a home builder in an average city in America right now, I would build all the $500,000 houses I could build because you could sell everything you built.
Okay.
There's just because that's an entry level in some markets. It's a number 2 move up in other markets, and it's just I would build. There's a tremendous inventory shortage. Now
I know this is going to be behind the scenes, but do you think banks are going to, after when the appraisal comes back, and they're saying, okay, this townhome that was, I mean, for example, I had a 309 townhouse. I bid for 330, and it finally sold for 363. So do you think the banks are going to counteroffer that, saying, I don't think this is going to be appraised for that high?
Well, they're going to run an appraisal, and if there's no statistical evidence that other townhouses are selling at the 369, then that deal's going to have a problem because that bank has got a bunch of regulations on them. They cannot loan more than appraisal. That's what got us in the 2008 debacle.
Gotcha.
Was them loaning on bogus appraisals. And so the appraisal industry since 2008 has tightened way up on regulations, and the banks are tightened way up. The mortgage companies are tightened way up. So they don't have a lot of wiggle room. So if somebody made that offer, they have to disclose to the bank they're paying 369, but if the appraisal comes back at 320, the bank's going to lend on 320. They got to have the cash in their pocket for the difference.
So, Grace, you're going to have to compromise on some things, whether that's location, the home type, how old it is, see past some things that you can renovate. But I don't want you to sit on the sidelines hoping for the market to shift drastically.
It's not going to, And I don't really disagree with your word obnoxious. I kind of think it's accurate. But it is based on supply and demand. And especially if you're trying to buy, it's distressing. It's harsh out there. Weird.